There's no room for people, normal people in this economy anymore. And everyone's just living paycheck to paycheck. There's not really any way around it anymore. And I think there's just honestly a lot of misconceptions when it comes to the economy. Because of course you can look and see that consumer spending is actually quite high right now. But at the same time, inflation's high. Cost of everything is going up. And it's not that people are being as wasteful as they used to be. Most people have really pulled their cards close to their chest. I think it's safe to say at this point that the days of the frivolous American consumer is gone. Spending just doesn't work like that anymore because it can't, because most people can't afford it. The reason that consumer spending is up while consumer sentiment is the lowest it's been in almost a year is simply because the cost of basic necessities have gone up. And basic necessities are just that. They're necessary for the household, necessary for life. But there's a limit to how thin the American can stretch the paycheck. And if you're living paycheck to paycheck, if you're seeing things like health insurance go up all of a sudden by $100 or $200, if you're seeing your property taxes go up, if you're seeing your home or car insurance go up all of a sudden, that can be a breaking point for a lot of people, not just in this country, but all over the world. One of the mistakes we make in America is thinking that all this is just happening in America, that it's just a problem that we have in our country, but it's something that's happening internationally right now. But what happens to America seems to really trickle down or infect, I guess is a better word, the rest of the world. It was the case when it came to just the consumer lifestyle, the keeping up with the Joneses, everyone needing the new iPhone every time it comes out, everyone needing a new car. But those days are going. You're seeing car sales slipping, home sales slipping. I mean, for the most part, people aren't even going to entertain the idea of buying a new home. And even private equity firms are losing interest in buying new construction homes simply because they're too expensive to build. Why do that when the market has more homes listed for sale right now than they have in 6 years? It's easier just to buy up single family homes all over the country at a discount when the prices are dropping as it becomes a buyer's market once again. And then of course always comes the conversation. Of course, maybe it's just easier to rent than it is to actually own a home, own a property. Because nobody wants to deal with insurance, taxes, and a mortgage. But the people you're renting from have insurance, taxes, and mortgages, and they still want to make a profit. So yes, you do end up paying more in rent than you would on a mortgage. But things can only be like this for so long. I heard a story the other day of someone who lost a six-figure job, and now, even though they're doing side gigs, the only jobs they've been able to get are paying them about $2,300, $2,400 a month. And because they were used to that lifestyle, that a six-figure income could afford them, put them in the position that even though they had an income coming in, that after the end of the month, they found themselves still in the negative, unable to even pay their bills. We have to remember that the average mortgage right now is in the $3,000 area, $3,000, $4,000. So what that means is that, at the end of the year, you're paying, $35,000 to $50,000 a year just in your mortgage. That's just in your mortgage. It's not including your car bills. It's not including, trips to the grocery store, any kind of entertainment, your insurance. The family upkeep for a family in America is $80,000. And that's just to pay everything off. That's just to make sure that you're able to pay the bills, that you have food. And that $80,000 is already well above the median household income of $75,000. So like I said, even though consumer spending is up, the consumer price index is up, consumer sentiment is at an all-time low because people can only cut costs so much. Coupons can only do so much. Using a fast food restaurant's app to save a couple dollars is only going to go so far. I mean, so we can hand these things over to personal accountability, but the family only has so much of an income that actually has a potential to have. You can say you can monetize every part of your life, you can work every hour of the day, but most families aren't going to be pulling in $150,000 or anything even close to that. That's why the median is $75,000. And I refuse to entertain the notion that half the country, they're just not working, they're just being lazy. Because people have to work. And I think it's a dangerous misconception that we're taught and we internalize and we project on the rest of the world to say that the reason why people are struggling as much as they are right now is simply because of the choices that they make when it comes to their finances. The choices you make with your finances are marginal They're marginal when it comes to inflation. They're marginal when it comes to the cost of living going up, the cost of housing going up. They're marginal when you've done everything that you possibly can to make sure that you're good, and you are good. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, your insurance goes up $200, $300, $400. And there isn't respite in sight. The cost of living crisis continues. It rolls on. It affects us. It affects normal Americans. It affects normal people all over the world. Because on top of taxes, on top of all the adjustments to cost of living, you throw tariffs on top of that. And companies leveling out the bill that they have because of the tariffs by spread loading it across all goods in the stores. And for those who think it is fake, for those who think that, oh, well, you know, this is just depends on what side of the political spectrum you sit on. Well, there's a reason why the biggest investment firms in the country are moving to used single family homes, older homes, instead of building their own subdevelopments where they can just rent it out to single families. It's because the impacts of tariffs. It's because the impacts of all the bad financial decisions that are being made by the government that are causing new builds to be unaffordable, even to be a bad investment, even for the richest corporations in the world. Like I said, at some point it goes beyond personal accountability, and we need to realize that. We need to realize that we can only do so much in the face of an economy that's betting against us, in the face of an economy in a market that says that they will continue to make record-breaking profits as long as people keep spending. As long as we increase the prices on things just enough that people can still afford them and not go default on their homes, still be able to pay their rent, then the system is working exactly how it should. But it's a flawed and a very short-term way to look at things as far as being able to maintain that kind of economy. Because at some point something has to give. At some point people just can't keep up with increases anymore, especially as the wages don't increase any further than they already are. We have to zoom out and look at the big picture. And the big picture says that the market's going crazy right now. All right, the jobs report comes in and says that the job market is bad for Americans, that it's the worst that it's been in 20 years. But the stock market goes up. The stock market goes up because they're like, well, people are unemployed. That means that the rates are going to come down. That means that everything's going to go up, that people are going to start spending more. They're going to start borrowing money more. But even if the rates come down, most people still can't get qualified for a loan. Most people still can't actually use the financial systems that allow them to borrow. So that spending won't actually be there. And that's the thing. Because if the spending is not there, and Wall Street makes a massive bet saying that because the rates are going down, we're going to invest more, and the prices of stocks go up, and corporations continue to buy their own stocks, what happens when those profits don't come? The jobs report and the collapse of the housing market already show that we're in a recession, if not a depression. What happens if the profits aren't there and the stock market crashes? What then? At that point, will they admit the dire situation that not just the American economy, but Americans have actually been in, have been struggling through? It's not likely. We all know what'll happen. They'll find a way to shove the blame off on the American consumer, as they always do, and then they'll bail out these companies who made this bet that Americans will pay the bill. And in the end, even if the markets crash, even if these people lose all their bets, the government will still write a check. Means that one way or another, the people pay the price. And when the only way out is to print more money because you have to write these massive checks to save these massive institutions, which are too large to fail, inflation continues. Inflation rises. The cost of goods rise. The cost of necessities rise. The cost of living rises. The cost of survival rises. And people are barely able to survive as it is right now in this country. And so how do we actually get through it as normal people? Right? I think spending is still a big thing. I think when we go to the store, we need to buy ingredients and not just items. I mean, one of the bad things I see in a lot of these videos of people who are spending so much money at the stores is simply because they're buying packaged, processed, frozen foods and saying that this is groceries. Like, only in this country is that groceries. Buying ingredients is still affordable. Learning to cook is still a great way to actually stretch your paycheck in a real way that's beneficial not just to yourself and your health, but to the health of your family. And that's something we need to move more towards. This is something that we've done, but we've always been a family that cooks. I will say, as much as I do love Aldi's, I actually went out to the Amish country here in Ohio yesterday and went to one of the stores out there. And it was like going back 15 years in prices, and everything was local. Everything was great. It's delicious, right? Clean foods, nice people. If you have a chance, if you live in a place where Amish country is nearby, definitely get out there and check it out. Just go to some of their stores. I think one of the saddest things we have is kind of a failure to maintain what a farmer's market should be in America. And I think this could be a video to itself, because I'm quite bitter about farmers markets here, because I think I've been spoiled when it comes to that. You know, the farmers markets and the bazaars that you have in Europe. The biggest thing, first off, is that they're affordable. An American farmers market is just, you know, you'll spend $10 on 2 peaches. There's no actual benefit to that. And a lot of the times you'll go to a farmer's market and the produce that they have there is just things that they bought from the store that are resold at a high price, saying that it's local. When I know that when I was back in Greece, you could spend $20 on a week's worth of fresh produce that came in from the countryside. I think it's just a real failure. And it's just that loss of community and an understanding of where your food comes from. Makes it so you don't actually care where it comes from. And you don't realize the costs that go into that kind of transportation as things get sent back and forth, and things are picked before they're even ripe. You know, you go to a place like an Amish store, you go to a place like a European farmer's market or bazaar, and you get things that were picked when they were fresh, as they should have been, because that's what harvest is supposed to be. I'm not supposed to get an apple and the apple's good for 3 or 4 months. It's just, nowhere in nature does that really exist. I think we've all had oranges that have sat in the fridge and 2 months later they're still good. Well, if that orange or that apple sat on the tree, I mean, it would have disintegrated at that point. Of course, there's always precious metals, and they're going to do well against the dollar as the dollar continues to crumble. And of course, there is the stock market, right? I mean, if the stock market's going to work against the system, you can always work against those who are betting against the system if the system's going to fail. You know, you can ride the same train that they're riding. Of course, your profits are going to be very slim in comparison, because you're not usually going to be betting with hundreds of millions of dollars. But a profit is a profit at the end of the day. So, you know, at this point, we all just kind of have to do what we have to do as the cost of living continues to soar. And Wall Street is betting that as cost of living goes up, we continue to spend, as the true value and worth of our paychecks and of our labor continuously decreases as the days go by. But if you're still here at this point, everybody, hey, thanks for watching. Watch some more of the content. Tell me what you think. Any ideas, put in the comment section. Think about becoming a member to support the channel. You know, things growing, and the conversation is really kind of getting out there from what this channel was originally supposed to be. Originally, this channel was simply supposed to be about letting people know that living abroad is an option. That is not something they should be afraid of. And I'm glad that this channel has had an impact in that conversation. And many people in the comment sections that have been around for a while, you know, some of them have already left this country and started a new life somewhere else. And very few of them, if any, that I can think of, have actually regretted that decision. Something for all of us to think about. But as always, thanks for stopping by, and we hope you have a good one.